The gentle murmur of overlapping conversations mingled with the occasional clink of fine silverware, creating an ambiance of understated elegance in the heart of a luxurious New York City restaurant. The lighting was intentionally warm, casting a soft golden glow over every table. It was the kind of place where each dish looked like it belonged in a gallery, and every patron carried an air of self-assured sophistication. Amid this polished crowd, Emma Brooks felt completely out of place. Confidence was the last thing she felt as she stood awkwardly by the entrance. Just minutes earlier, her reflection in the restaurant's glossy front window had brought her insecurities into sharp focus. The dress she wore, though carefully chosen, was secondhand. Her shoes bore the marks of years of wear, and her nerves were frayed from days of worrying about this moment. But she had made a promise to Jenny, her best friend and unwavering cheerleader, that she wouldn't back out of this blind date. Clutching her phone tightly as if it could anchor her, Emma stepped inside and began scanning the sea of occupied tables, her heart thundering in her chest. Table 7, Table 7, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's quiet buzz, her pulse quickening with every step. At last, her eyes settled on a man sitting alone at a table tucked away in the back. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his posture relaxed but poised. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he seemed preoccupied with something on his phone, oblivious to the world around him. That must be him, she thought, her nerves tangling tighter as she took a deep breath. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, Emma straightened her shoulders, plastered on a bright smile, and made her way to the table. "Hi," she said, her voice faltering slightly. "You must be Kevin. I'm Emma. Nice to meet you." Liam Parker's head snapped up at the sound of her voice, his expression shifting from confusion to intrigue in an instant. He blinked, caught completely off guard, his mind racing to process the unexpected interruption. "Uh-huh," he said hesitantly, unsure of how to respond. Mistaking his hesitation for shyness, Emma quickly slid into the chair across from him, clasping her hands nervously in her lap as she tried to steady herself. "I get it. This is awkward," she said with a small nervous laugh. "Blind dates are so weird, aren't they? Jenny told me you might be on the quiet side, so no worries. I can talk enough for the both of us." Liam opened his mouth to explain the misunderstanding, but something about her nervous smile made him pause. Moments earlier, his business associate had texted to cancel their meeting, leaving him with an unexpected free evening. Now, faced with Emma's disarming smile, he found himself intrigued. She was so different from the polished socialites and business contacts he usually encountered. There was an openness about her that felt refreshing. She seemed genuine, almost startlingly so. On a whim, he decided to play along. A faint, amused smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "You're absolutely right. Blind dates are definitely something else," Liam said, the faint smile now spreading into a smirk. Emma let out a nervous laugh as she reached for her water, hoping to steady herself. "Oh, tell me about it," she said, setting her glass down. "Jenny's been on my case for months, trying to set me up, but I've been too busy. Work and all that." "Work?" Liam asked, leaning forward slightly. His curiosity piqued despite himself. "I'm a waitress," Emma admitted, her voice tinged with self-consciousness. She fidgeted with the corner of her napkin. "It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills, or at least most of them." She forced a smile, eager to shift the spotlight away from herself. "But enough about me. What do you do?" Liam hesitated for a moment before answering vaguely. "I work in tech," he said simply. "Tech?" Emma's eyes lit up. "That's cool. You mean like coding and apps and all that? I'm terrible with computers, so I'm already impressed." "Something like that," Liam replied, his smile growing as her enthusiasm proved contagious. Leaning back in his chair, Liam studied her carefully. Her straightforward honesty was unlike anything he was used to, even if it came with a case of mistaken identity. To his surprise, Their conversation began to flow naturally, a rhythm developing as they talked. Emma opened up about her life, recounting humorous and frustrating anecdotes from her shifts at the diner, the challenges of keeping up with rent, and her dream of someday owning her own art studio. Liam couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed so much. Her stories, though simple, were filled with an infectious energy that left him grinning from ear to ear. "You're not what I expected," Emma said suddenly, breaking the flow of conversation with a thoughtful tone. Liam tilted his head, raising a curious eyebrow. "What do you mean by that?" "Well," Emma began, her cheeks coloring slightly, "Jenny told me you were the reserved type, but honestly, you're really easy to talk to." Liam chuckled, his voice low and warm. "You're pretty easy to talk to yourself," he replied. Emma's face lit up at his words, her earlier nervousness melting away. She felt herself relaxing, more at ease than she'd been all evening. Just as she was about to ask him another question about his work, her phone buzzed on the table. A message appeared on the screen. "Hey, Emma, where are you? I'm at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you. Kevin." Emma's heart sank as the realization hit her. Slowly, she looked up at Liam, her face growing hot with mortification. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she asked hesitantly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Liam's smile faltered as a flicker of guilt passed over his face. "No," he admitted quietly. "I'm not." Emma felt a wave of nausea as the truth hit her like a freight train. "Oh my God," she whispered, the words barely audible as she pushed her chair back and stood abruptly. I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table. This is mortifying." "Wait," Liam said quickly, standing as well, his voice tinged with concern. "Emma, hold on. It's okay. But Emma was already gathering her coat, her face burning with embarrassment as she rushed toward the door, avoiding his gaze. Liam stood frozen, watching her retreating figure disappear through the restaurant's entrance. A strange cocktail of regret and curiosity churned within him, leaving him unsettled. He had planned to correct her mistake right away, but something about her had stopped him. Now, as he stood alone, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd ever see her again, and why the idea of never seeing her again bothered him so deeply. Later that night, Liam sat in his sprawling penthouse suite, his gaze fixed on the shimmering New York City skyline beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The muted glow of the city lights and the steady hum of traffic below usually offered him solace after a long day. Tonight, however, his thoughts were consumed by something, or rather, someone else entirely. He replayed the brief but memorable encounter with Emma over and over in his mind, each detail sharper than the last. There was something about her, a refreshing sincerity and warmth that felt utterly foreign in his world of curated facades and calculated exchanges. She had spoken with honesty and vulnerability, sharing glimpses of her life with an openness that felt disarming and rare. It stood in stark contrast to the people he typically dealt with, business associates who chose their words as carefully as stocks, and women who saw only his wealth, never the man behind it. Emma had mistaken him for someone else, someone ordinary, and strangely, it had made her authenticity all the more intriguing. For the first time in what felt like ages, Liam found himself genuinely curious about her world, about the fleeting connection they'd shared. Across the city, Emma collapsed onto the worn couch in her tiny apartment, burying her face in a throw pillow as a groan of frustration escaped her lips. Her roommate, Jenny, glanced up from her laptop, amusement twinkling in her eyes as she took in Emma's dramatic posture. "Rough night, I take it?" Jenny teased, closing her laptop and leaning back in her chair. Emma sat up abruptly, her cheeks still flushed with embarrassment. "Worse than rough. I sat at the wrong table, Jenny. I spent the whole evening talking to some random guy thinking he was Kevin." Jenny clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle her laughter. "Oh no. What happened?" Emma launched into the story, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush as she relived each mortifying moment. The worst part? He was nice. Really nice. Funny even. But then, I got the text from the actual Kevin, and I just bolted like a complete idiot. Honestly, that sounds like the setup for a rom-com, Jenny teased, her grin widening. Emma let out another groan, pulling a pillow over her face. I just hope I never have to see him again. Ever. Jenny raised an eyebrow, smirking slightly. Are you absolutely sure about that? Because, if I recall, you said he was nice. Okay, yes, he was, Emma admitted reluctantly, lowering the pillow just enough for her voice to come through. But that doesn't change the fact that I made a complete fool of myself. Jenny shrugged, her tone more thoughtful now. Maybe it's not as bad as you think. People make mistakes all the time. And if he's really as nice as you're saying, maybe he didn't even mind. The next morning, Liam found himself seated at his desk in his sprawling corner office, his attention drifting as his assistant, Claire, methodically reviewed the day's packed schedule. Cancel the lunch with Rothman, Liam interrupted suddenly, his tone more abrupt than usual. Claire stopped mid-sentence, glancing up from her clipboard with a curious expression. You've been distracted since yesterday evening. Something happened? Liam hesitated, the words catching in his throat before he finally decided to speak. I met someone, he admitted. By accident. Claire's eyebrow arched, her curiosity piqued. Accidentally? She echoed, leaning against the desk. Liam leaned back, running a hand through his hair. She mistook me for someone else and we talked. She doesn't know who I am. For the first time in years, it felt normal. And now? Claire prompted, setting her clipboard aside to give him her full attention. I want to see her again, Liam said, his voice unusually soft but resolute. A faint smile played on Claire's lips. And how exactly are you planning to make that happen? She asked, crossing her arms. I've got an idea, Liam replied, standing up abruptly, a spark of determination lighting his expression. Later that afternoon, Emma wiped down a table at the diner where she worked, ready to clock out for the day, when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled her phone out, glancing at the screen with a frown. The number wasn't saved in her contacts. The message read, Hi Emma, this is Liam. I'm the guy from the restaurant the other night. I know there was a mix-up, but I'd really like to see you again. Coffee, maybe? Emma stared at the screen, her heart thudding harder than she cared to admit. Liam. He wasn't Kevin's friend, was he? She thought, a flurry of emotion swirling in her chest. That evening, Emma thrust her phone toward Jenny, her voice tinged with uncertainty. What do I even do about this? She asked. Jenny's face broke into a wide grin. You say yes, of course. What's the absolute worst that could happen? After a long moment of hesitation, Emma typed out her response, her fingers trembling slightly. Okay, coffee sounds nice, she wrote, before hitting send and immediately regretting it, though only for a moment. The coffee shop Liam picked was quaint, tucked into a quiet side street away from the bustling crowds Emma was used to in the city. Its warm, inviting interior felt like a haven. When Emma stepped inside, she spotted Liam immediately. He was already seated at a corner table, dressed down in a simple button-down and jeans. He looked nothing like the sharply dressed man she had met before. Hi, Emma said softly, sliding into the chair opposite him, her heart fluttering despite her attempts to stay composed. Hi, Liam replied warmly, his smile as genuine as she remembered. Thanks for agreeing to meet me. Emma shrugged, trying to brush off her nerves. I guess I figured I owed you an apology for bolting the way I did the other night, she said sheepishly. No apology needed, Liam said quickly, shaking his head. Honestly, I'm glad you did. If you hadn't, I wouldn't have had a good excuse to reach out. As they ordered their drinks and began to talk, Emma slowly felt the tension ease from her shoulders. Their conversation flowed as naturally as it had the first time. Liam's dry sense of humor caught her off guard, and she found herself smiling more often than not. He was surprisingly easy to talk to. He asked her about everything: her art, her family, and the dreams she held on to, despite how hard life had been lately. After a moment of comfortable silence, Emma tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "So, what exactly do you do?" she asked. "I work in tech," Liam answered with a shrug, keeping his explanation intentionally vague. "Mostly startups." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds complicated," she said with a small laugh. "It can be," Liam admitted, his smile softening. "But I like the challenge." As the minutes turned into hours, Liam found himself captivated by Emma's stories. The more she shared, the more he felt himself drawn into her world. Emma opened up about her mother, who was struggling with mounting medical bills, forcing Emma to juggle 2 jobs. She also talked about her art, the passion she dreamed of turning into a full-time career one day. "You're incredibly resilient," Liam said softly, his admiration evident in his tone. Emma chuckled, the sound light and self-deprecating. "Resilient or just plain stubborn? Take your pick," she teased. Later that evening, back at his sleek office, Liam's assistant Claire intercepted him as he entered. "You've been gone practically the whole day," Claire said, crossing her arms as she leaned against his desk. "What's going on with this woman?" Liam sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "She's different," he admitted, his voice tinged with something Claire hadn't heard from him before: vulnerability. Claire's eyebrows shot up as she folded her arms. "Let me guess, you still haven't told her who you really are?" "Not yet," Liam confessed, his voice low. "I want her to get to know me for who I am, not for my bank account or my reputation." Claire's expression softened, but her tone remained firm and unyielding. "You know you can't keep this charade going forever," she said pointedly. "She's going to find out eventually, and trust me, it won't end well if she feels betrayed." Liam nodded, a heavy weight settling on his shoulders. He knew Claire was right. But for now, the thought of risking this fragile connection, the first genuine bond he'd felt in years, was too much to bear. The comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee greeted Emma as she stepped into the cozy cafe. Unlike before, her nerves were slightly calmer, though her heart still fluttered with anticipation. Her eyes landed on Liam sitting at a corner table, and she offered a small, tentative wave. Liam looked up from his phone, his smile broadening into something warm and inviting. He looked much more relaxed than the man she had first met, dressed casually in a gray sweater and jeans that perfectly matched the laid-back atmosphere of the cafe. "Hi," Emma said softly as she slid into the chair across from him, her nerves easing slightly at his easygoing demeanor. "Hi," Liam replied, his voice low and genuine. "Thanks for agreeing to meet me again." Emma shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Well, it's not every day someone you accidentally meet at a restaurant texts you out of the blue." Liam chuckled lightly, taking a sip of his coffee. "I was curious," he admitted, "and I'm really glad curiosity won this time." Before long, their conversation settled into an easy rhythm, with shared laughter punctuating the soft buzz of the cafe around them. Liam showed a genuine interest in Emma's art, asking thoughtful questions that made her feel seen. She soon found herself sharing more than she usually did. "Drawing has always been my escape," Emma confessed. "When things were tough, my dad used to encourage me to keep sketching. It's always been my dream to open a studio for kids who might need that same escape." "You're so passionate about your art," Liam observed, his admiration for her evident. "It's really all I've ever wanted," Emma admitted, her cheeks turning pink under his steady gaze. "And you will get there," Liam said confidently, his tone leaving no room for doubt. After they left the cafe, Emma suggested they take a walk, leading Liam to her favorite park. It was a small, picturesque haven with winding paths, towering trees, and plenty of quiet nooks perfect for sketching. "This is my favorite place to come when I need inspiration," Emma said, pulling a well-worn sketchbook from her bag. She flipped through the pages, revealing intricate drawings of bustling cityscapes, quiet moments in nature, and the occasional portrait. Liam leaned closer, his expression one of genuine awe. "These are amazing," he said. "Seriously, you could sell these." Emma smiled, her shyness evident. "Maybe one day," she replied softly. "For now, they're just for me." As they strolled along the winding paths, Emma paused by the pond. She perched on a nearby bench and began sketching a young child feeding ducks. Liam stood a few steps away, watching in quiet admiration as Emma's focus sharpened and her hands moved with practiced ease over the page. "You're incredible," he said softly, his voice carrying an almost reverent tone. Emma looked up, surprised by the intensity in his gaze. "I'm just drawing," she said with a small laugh. "No," Liam replied, his voice steady and sincere. "It's so much more than that." A few days later, Liam surprised Emma by offering to help her with her grocery shopping. "It's not a big deal," he said casually, waving off her protests. "You're going to regret offering," Emma teased as they stood in line at the discount market, her arms full of canned goods. "And why's that?" Liam asked with a raised brow, effortlessly holding a carton of milk in one hand. "Because these bags are seriously heavy," Emma replied with a laugh, already bracing herself for the trek home. By the time they reached her apartment building, Liam was carrying the bulk of the bags, his arms loaded. He couldn't help but notice the peeling paint on the walls and the flickering lights overhead as they climbed the narrow staircase. "This place has a lot of character," Liam said diplomatically, glancing around with curiosity. Emma snorted, unlocking the door. "That's a very polite way to say it's falling apart," she quipped. Inside, Emma's apartment was modest, the living room cluttered with art supplies, sketch pads, pencils, and paints strewn across a small coffee table. The walls were adorned with her drawings, creating a makeshift gallery filled with vibrant life and creativity. Liam paused, taking it all in. A pang of admiration, mixed with guilt, hit him. Though her surroundings were simple, the warmth and artistic energy of the space made it feel alive, something money couldn't buy. While they unpacked the groceries together, Emma began to open up about her mother, how she had always supported Emma's artistic passions, even now, while struggling with her own health challenges. "It's hard sometimes," Emma admitted softly as she stacked cans in the cupboard. "But I'm so lucky to have her. She's the strongest person I know." Liam nodded, her words deepening his respect for her. The quiet strength she exuded and her love for her family struck him in ways he hadn't expected. One evening, Emma nervously invited Liam to an art gallery opening she'd been looking forward to for weeks. It was a small event, but it meant a lot to her. Walking through the gallery together, Liam couldn't help but notice how Emma's face lit up with wonder at every painting and sculpture they passed. Liam found himself enthralled by her passion. One painting stopped Emma in her tracks, a vivid depiction of a father and daughter fishing by a serene lake. The strokes of the brush seemed to capture an unspoken story. Emma's breath caught, her eyes suddenly misty as she stared at the piece. "What's wrong?" Liam asked gently, stepping closer to her side. "Emma." Emma hardly raised her voice above a whisper. "It's just, this reminds me of my dad," Emma murmured, her voice trembling. "When I was little, we used to go fishing every summer." Tears filled her eyes and she wiped them away hastily. "Sorry, I'm being silly. It's just a painting." "It's not silly," Liam said softly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I think he'd be really proud of you." Emma glanced up at him, her defenses down and her emotions written plainly on her face. For a fleeting moment, the gallery, the people, and the noise around them seemed to disappear, leaving just the two of them connected in quiet understanding. As they walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, Emma's thoughts swirled with a mix of longing and confusion. Liam, or Kevin, as she still believed he was, had become someone she found herself looking forward to. He made her feel seen, understood, and supported in a way that few others had. Yet, a small voice in her mind reminded her of the stark differences in their lives, the impossibility of their worlds truly aligning. "I don't get it," Emma blurted out suddenly, shattering the quiet between them. Liam turned to her, his brow furrowing. "Don't get what?" he asked gently. "Why you're spending so much time with me," Emma said hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You could be anywhere, with anyone. Why me?" Liam hesitated, his guilt bubbling to the surface. "Because I like being around you," he said earnestly. "Isn't that enough?" Emma managed a faint smile, but her doubts lingered, casting a shadow over the quiet moment. Later that night, Liam sat in his penthouse, the sprawling view of the city before him offering no comfort. The usually dazzling lights felt cold and distant. He knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever, but the idea of losing her, of shattering the fragile connection they had built, filled him with dread. For now, he convinced himself that holding on to their moments, however fleeting, was better than risking it all, even if it meant living a lie for just a little longer. The soft hum of distant traffic filled the air as Emma sat cross-legged on her worn couch, her phone in one hand and a mug of tea in the other. She idly scrolled through her notifications, trying to unwind after a long day. Her thumb froze mid-swipe when a headline caught her eye. "Liam Parker, the elusive tech millionaire, expands philanthropic efforts." Frowning in curiosity, she tapped the link. A photo loaded at the top of the article. A man in a sleek suit with dark, neatly styled hair. His confident posture sent a jolt of recognition through her. Emma squinted, her brow furrowing deeply as she studied the image. He had a familiar appearance. "Jenny," Emma called out, her voice sharp with urgency. Her roommate glanced up from the jigsaw puzzle she was carefully piecing together at the kitchen table. "What's going on?" Jenny asked, not bothering to look up just yet. Emma held her phone out, the screen glowing. "Does this guy look like Kevin to you?" she demanded. Jenny squinted, then burst out laughing. "Not even close. That guy's what, a billionaire or something? Kevin's way more down to earth." Emma frowned, the resemblance nagging at the edges of her mind. Still, she shook her head, muttering to herself, "Don't be ridiculous, Emma." A few days later, Emma decided to invite Liam over for dinner. It was a simple gesture, but she wanted to thank him for his kindness. His encouragement over the past few weeks had meant more to her than she knew how to express. A home-cooked meal felt like the least she could do. When Liam arrived at her door, holding a bouquet of wildflowers, Emma couldn't help but smile warmly. "You didn't have to bring flowers," she said, her cheeks flushing slightly. Liam shrugged, handing her the bouquet. "Think of it as a thank you for letting me crash your evening," he replied with a grin. Dinner was simple but comforting. Spaghetti and garlic bread served on mismatched plates, with soft laughter filling the small kitchen. Over dinner, Emma shared her plans to enter her sketches into a local art competition, a bold decision inspired by Liam's constant encouragement. "You've done so much for me," Emma said quietly, her gratitude evident in her soft smile. "Just so modest, not just with the artistic stuff. It's revitalizing." Liam's smile wavered for the briefest moment, guilt flashing across his features before he quickly masked it. As Emma went on, Liam's remorse tore at him as he sipped his water and said, "I'm just being myself." Even though she admired and trusted him, their relationship was based on deception. Despite the weight of his guilt, Liam told himself he wasn't ready to risk losing Emma. Not yet. Their connection felt too precious, too fragile to shatter with the truth. But the truth, as it often did, was poised to emerge in its own time, with or without his consent. A week later, Emma volunteered at a prestigious charity gala, her role to help coordinate the silent auction-raising funds for underprivileged youth. The event, though stressful, was one she had eagerly looked forward to. Emma was carefully arranging the final items on one of the auction tables when a sudden ripple of excitement buzzed through the room, catching her attention. "Who is that?" one of the volunteers whispered, nudging Emma and gesturing toward the grand entrance. Emma turned slowly, her breath catching as her gaze landed on Liam. He was stepping into the ballroom with quiet confidence, his tailored suit impeccably fitted. The way he moved, commanding yet composed, made it clear he wasn't just another guest. He was someone important. Emma's heart raced, a mix of confusion and disbelief swirling in her chest. What is he doing here? She thought, her hands trembling slightly. She watched as the event organizer greeted him enthusiastically, shaking his hand before turning to address the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," the organizer began, her voice bright and clear, "it is my great honor to welcome our esteemed guest of honor tonight, Mr. Liam Parker, whose remarkable generosity has made this event possible." The applause that erupted was deafening, but Emma heard none of it. Her world felt like it had tilted off its axis. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, leaving her breathless. Liam Parker, the Liam she'd been spending time with, wasn't just anyone. He was the tech billionaire she'd seen in the article. Liam Parker, she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. "He's the billionaire? The man I thought was Kevin?" Emma spent the next hour in a daze, waiting for a quiet moment before she finally summoned the courage to approach Liam. She found him standing near a cluster of attendees, his usual composed expression faltering the moment his eyes landed on her. "Emma," he started, his voice softer than she had expected as he stepped toward her. "We need to talk," Emma interrupted, her voice steady but laced with ice. Without another word, Liam nodded and gestured for her to follow him to a quiet hallway just outside the bustling ballroom. Once they were alone, Emma crossed her arms tightly over her chest, her eyes narrowing. "So," she said, her voice cutting, "you're Liam Parker, the billionaire? Care to explain why you decided to lie to me?" Liam exhaled deeply, his hand raking through his hair as he tried to find the right words. "I didn't set out to lie to you, Emma. When we first met, it was a mistake. You thought I was someone else, and for once it felt easy. I didn't want to ruin that." "For once," Liam said quietly. "Someone didn't look at me and see a dollar sign." Emma's jaw tightened, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "So what?" Emma snapped. "You just decided to keep the charade going? Let me fall for a version of you that doesn't even exist?" "No," Liam said quickly, his tone desperate. "Everything we shared was real. Everything I told you came from the heart." "I didn't know how to tell you the truth," he admitted, his voice softening. "Without losing me, you mean?" Emma interrupted, her voice rising with emotion. "Without breaking your perfect little illusion? Do you even realize how humiliating this is for me?" she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "I trusted you, Liam. I really thought you were different." "I am different," Liam said, his voice tinged with desperation as he stepped closer. "Emma," he began, "you're the only person who's ever truly seen me, not for my money, not for my reputation, but for who I really am. I didn't want to lose that," he finished, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she blinked them away and shook her head. "You already have," she said quietly, her tone laced with heartbreak. Liam's heart plummeted as Emma turned on her heel, her steps quick and deliberate, the distance between them growing with every passing second. He instinctively reached out, but his hand fell back to his side. There were no words, nothing he could say to undo the damage. That night, Emma sat on her bedroom floor, surrounded by her sketches, her pencil untouched. Her mind raced too fast for her hands to create. Her thoughts churned like a storm, anger, betrayal, and a sadness that seemed to pull her under like a riptide. A soft knock interrupted her reverie. Jenny peeked her head in, her eyes filled with concern. "Hey, you okay?" Jenny asked, her voice gentle. Emma shook her head silently, a tear slipping down her cheek. "No," she whispered. "Not really." Jenny didn't hesitate. She stepped inside, crossed the room in a few strides, and sat beside Emma, wrapping her arms around her tightly. "Do you want to talk about it?" Jenny asked, her voice soft and full of understanding. Emma hesitated, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I was falling for him or the version of him I thought I knew. And now I don't even know what's real. Jenny pulled her closer, her voice firm yet kind. Whatever it was, Emma, you deserve honesty. You deserve someone who tells you the truth, no matter what. Don't ever settle for less than that. Later that night, Emma lay on her bed, her hands clasped behind her head as she stared at the cracked ceiling. Her thoughts swirled, but one resolution became clear. She had to protect her heart. Liam Parker had been so charming, so kind, but his lies had sliced through her trust too deeply to ignore. For now, she decided, her focus would be on herself, her dreams, and her family. Liam and his lies had no place in the picture she needed to paint for her future. Liam sat motionless at his desk, his chair turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the bustling city. Normally, the glittering lights brought him solace, a reminder of his accomplishments. Tonight, they felt hollow. Tonight, the city seemed cold and distant, mirroring the emptiness that had settled in his chest. Her words replayed in his mind on an endless loop, each repetition twisting the knife of guilt deeper. You already have. The words haunted him, a reminder of the damage he couldn't undo. The weight of his mistake bore down on him like an anchor, pulling him further into regret. He hadn't just lied, he'd destroyed the trust of the one person who had looked beyond his fortune and seen him for who he truly was. And now, she was gone, and he had no one to blame but himself. I have to fix this, he muttered, his voice hoarse. He didn't know how, but he knew he couldn't let things end this way. The sound of the office door opening drew him from his thoughts. Claire, his ever-efficient assistant, stepped in, holding a steaming mug of coffee. Long night? She asked, setting the cup down on his desk and tilting her head. Liam turned to her slowly, his expression more serious than she'd seen in a long time. Claire, I need your advice, he said. Claire's brow arched in surprise. That's new. You're usually the one dishing it out. What's going on? She asked, leaning against his desk. It's about Emma, Liam admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Over the next few minutes, he recounted everything, the mix-up at the restaurant, the lies, the fallout. Claire listened intently, her expression shifting between surprise and sympathy. When he finished, she nodded thoughtfully. If she's as special as you say, Claire began, her voice firm but gentle, then words aren't going to cut it. You need to show her how much she means to you. Actions always speak louder than apologies. The next morning, Liam found himself standing outside Emma's apartment building, his nerves frayed. He raised his hand to knock, hesitating for just a moment before his knuckles met the wood. The door opened, and instead of Emma, he was met with Jenny's sharp, skeptical gaze. "You've got some nerve showing up here," Jenny said flatly, crossing her arms and leaning against the doorframe. "I need your help," Liam said earnestly, his eyes pleading. "Please, Jenny, just hear me out." Jenny studied him for a long moment, her arms still crossed. Finally, she sighed and stepped back. "Fine. You've got 5 minutes. Don't waste them." Inside, Liam sat on the edge of the couch, his hands clasped tightly together as he laid out his plan. His tone was measured, but the urgency in his voice was undeniable. "I want to buy the gallery Emma's always dreamed of owning," he began, his voice steady. "And I want to fill it with her artwork. Every piece she's ever created deserves to be seen." Liam opened a folder he'd brought with him, revealing carefully preserved sketches Emma had shown him. "I've been collecting her work. I know how much it means to her. I want her to see how much I believe in her," Liam continued, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'll do whatever it takes to make things right between us." Jenny leaned back, studying him with a mixture of doubt and reluctant admiration. After a long pause, she nodded. "She deserves someone who'll fight for her," Jenny said, her tone firm. "If you screw this up, Liam, you won't get another chance." Over the next several weeks, Liam poured every ounce of energy he had into the project. His days were consumed with meetings, phone calls, and meticulous planning. He struck a deal with the gallery owner, ensuring every detail of the space reflected Emma's essence. He spent hours curating her artwork, arranging the pieces in a way that told the story of her journey. Each sketch and painting was carefully framed and illuminated under warm lighting, turning the gallery into a breathtaking tribute to Emma's talent and the dreams she'd nurtured for so long. On the day of the reveal, Liam placed a handwritten note on the gallery's front desk. After a final sweep of the space to ensure perfection, he stepped back, leaving the moment for Emma alone. Emma was making her way home from another long shift at the diner, her mind preoccupied, when Jenny appeared out of nowhere, practically bouncing with excitement. "You need to come with me." "Right now," Jenny said, grabbing Emma's arm with urgency. "What? Why?" "Jenny, I'm exhausted," Emma protested, confusion creasing her brow. "Trust me," Jenny insisted, tugging her along. Before Emma could argue further, they were heading toward the small gallery Emma had always admired but never dared enter. As they reached the gallery, Emma stopped in her tracks. Her breath caught as she took in the sight before her. Her eyes widened as she read the sign. "Special Exhibit, The Art of Emma Brooks." The words felt surreal, like a dream she hadn't realized she was living. Her heart pounded in her chest as she pushed open the door and stepped inside, her palms sweating in anticipation. The gallery was transformed. Every wall was lined with her artwork, landscapes, intricate portraits, and whimsical sketches she had poured her heart into over the years. Each piece seemed to radiate life. The room was empty, save for a single note resting on a sleek pedestal in the center. Its presence beckoned her forward. Emma approached slowly, her hands trembling as she reached for the note. "Your art deserves to be seen by the world, Emma, just as much as you deserve love, honesty, and someone who truly sees you for who you are. Let me try again. Liam." Emma's fingers brushed over the inked words, her emotions swirling. Tears blurred her vision as she glanced around the gallery, taking in the sight of her work displayed so beautifully. It was as if someone had taken her dreams and turned them into reality. She recognized every sketch, every painting, each one a fragment of her life, from her joys to her struggles. It was like walking through a timeline of her soul, her journey laid bare for the world to see. A soft shuffle of footsteps broke the silence, and Emma turned sharply. From behind a partition, Liam stepped out slowly. His expression was a mixture of vulnerability and hope, his hands tucked nervously in his pockets. "Emma," he said, his voice calm but trembling with unspoken emotion. "I know I don't deserve this moment, but I couldn't walk away without trying to make things right. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Liam continued, stepping closer. "But I couldn't let you go without showing you what you mean to me. You're everything I've been looking for, Emma, even when I didn't know I was looking." Emma turned fully to face him, her tears spilling freely down her cheeks. Her heart ached with the weight of his words, but doubt lingered in the back of her mind. "You broke my trust, Liam," she said softly, her voice heavy with emotion. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forget that." Her arms crossed protectively over her chest, creating a barrier between them. Liam nodded slowly, his gaze locked on hers, unwavering despite the pain reflected in her eyes. "I know," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life proving that you can trust me again, if you'll let me." "Emma," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "you're the only thing in my life that's ever felt real. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Emma's gaze fell to the floor as her emotions waged war within her. She felt the pull of her heart urging her to take a leap, but her mind reminded her of the hurt he'd caused. "You made me feel like I wasn't enough, Liam," she said, her voice trembling. "Like you thought I couldn't handle the truth, that I wasn't worth being honest with." "That's not it at all," Liam said quickly, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotions. "I was scared, Emma," he admitted, his words tumbling out. Scared you'd see me differently if you knew who I really was. Scared you'd walk away before I even had the chance to show you the person I'm trying to be. Emma hesitated, her chest tightening as her emotions swirled. She loved him. There was no denying that. But love alone wasn't enough to erase the doubt, the betrayal, the fear. But she wasn't sure she could take the chance of trusting him once more. After a long silence, Emma finally met his gaze. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she said, Maybe some things are worth a second chance." Liam's eyes lit up with hope, but Emma quickly raised a hand, halting him before he could speak. "I'm not saying it'll be easy," she said firmly. "But I'm willing to try, Liam. On one condition. You can't ever lie to me again. About anything." Liam took a cautious step forward, his voice filled with gratitude and a tremor of relief. "That's all I could ever ask for, Emma," he said. "Thank you for giving me another chance." As they stood in the gallery, surrounded by the vibrant echoes of Emma's creativity, the tension between them began to dissipate. For the first time in weeks, there was the faintest glimmer of hope. As Emma left the gallery that evening, she paused at the door, glancing back over her shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes held a flicker of something. Hope, maybe, or the cautious beginnings of trust. Liam watched her retreat, his heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty, but buoyed by a fragile hope that she might truly give him a second chance. He had taken the initiative, but now it was her turn. An emergency. That night, Emma sat by her bedroom window, the faint glow of the streetlights below casting soft shadows across her small room. She wrapped herself in a blanket, her thoughts swirling. In her hands, she held the note Liam had left for her at the gallery, its words looping in her mind like a haunting melody. "Let me try again," she whispered aloud, her voice barely audible in the stillness. She ran her fingers over the paper, her heart conflicted. For days, she'd replayed it all, the deception that had shattered her trust, the apology that had cracked open her heart, and the extraordinary effort he had made to show her what she meant to him. The gallery filled with her artwork wasn't just a grand gesture. It was a mirror reflecting how deeply he believed in her and how far he was willing to go to support her dreams. It was more than words. It was action, a declaration of love and faith that she hadn't expected but couldn't ignore. Even in moments when she doubted herself, Liam had seen her potential. Now her heart tugged in two directions, caught between protecting herself and taking a chance. Part of her screamed to stay guarded, to walk away before risking more pain, more betrayal. But another part, stronger and more persistent, whispered the undeniable truth. She still loved him, deeply. With a deep breath, Emma stood and grabbed her coat and phone. Her hands trembled slightly, but her resolve pushed her forward. The small cafe was quiet, the warm lighting and faint hum of conversation offering a gentle contrast to the nervous energy that churned in Emma's chest as she stepped inside. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Liam, seated at the same corner table where they had first met by mistake. He looked up at her approach, his face a mixture of relief, hope, and apprehension, as if he wasn't sure whether she would sit down or walk away. "Emma," Liam said softly, standing as she reached the table, his voice tentative but warm. "Hi," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt, though her heart fluttered with every step closer. They sat across from each other, the silence between them heavy but not uncomfortable. Liam broke it first, his voice low and tentative. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he admitted, his eyes searching hers for some hint of what she was feeling. "I almost didn't," Emma said, her honesty catching him off guard. She folded her hands tightly in her lap. She met his gaze directly, her voice firm but free of the anger that had burned between them before. "Liam, I've spent weeks trying to figure out if I can trust you again," she began, her tone steady but laced with vulnerability. "And I've realized something," she continued, pausing to gather her thoughts. "I don't need grand gestures or elaborate apologies," she said, shaking her head slightly. "I don't need you to prove anything with money or gifts, Liam. That's not what this is about. What I need is honesty. That's all I've ever wanted from you," Emma finished, her voice steady. Liam leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. His voice was calm but carried the weight of sincerity. "You have my word, Emma. No more secrets, no more lies. Just me, as I am, for as long as you'll let me stay in your life." Emma studied his face, her eyes scanning for even the slightest hint of doubt or insincerity. All she saw in his eyes was truth, an openness she hadn't seen before. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded, her lips curving into a faint but genuine smile. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's try again." Relief flooded Liam's face, his shoulders relaxing as a genuine smile broke across his features, a smile Emma hadn't seen in what felt like forever. Several months later, Emma stood in the heart of her newly opened art gallery. The space buzzed with energy, laughter, and the excited murmurs of friends, family, and a community of supporters. Guests moved through the gallery, admiring the array of vibrant pieces on display. The walls showcased Emma's work alongside that of young, emerging artists she had mentored, a dream she had never imagined would come to fruition so quickly. Liam had been there every step of the way. While he had the means to fund the gallery outright, he insisted on supporting Emma with something far more meaningful: his unwavering belief in her vision. From the beginning, he had made it clear that the gallery was hers, in name, spirit, and purpose. Emma poured herself into creating a space where creativity thrived, fostering community and connection through art. Emma moved through the room, stopping to chat with guests and basking in the warmth of their kind words. She felt a gentle tap on her shoulder and turned to find Liam standing there. He was dressed in a sharp suit, as always, but his eyes held a mischievous sparkle that made her smile instinctively. "Can I borrow you for just a moment?" he asked, offering her his hand. Emma laughed softly, placing her hand in his. "You've already got me, Liam, but sure." He led her toward the front of the gallery, where the soft hum of conversation began to quiet. The crowd instinctively turned their attention to the pair. "Emma," Liam began, his voice clear but laced with emotion, "you sat at the wrong table that night. But in doing so, you showed me everything I didn't know I needed. From that moment, I knew you were the right person for me." A wave of murmurs and gasps rippled through the crowd as Liam reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. He sank to one knee, his gaze never leaving Emma's. "I love you for your strength, your kindness, and the way you find beauty in everything around you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. So, Emma Brooks," he said, holding out the ring, "will you marry me?" Tears filled Emma's eyes as the crowd erupted in cheers and applause around them. Her heart felt like it might burst with the mix of love and joy swelling within her. She laughed through her tears, brushing them away with the back of her hand. "Only if you promise. No more secrets, ever," she said, her voice teasing but firm. Liam's grin widened, his voice filled with conviction. "I promise. Always." Emma nodded, extending her hand toward him as the crowd watched with bated breath. "Then yes," she whispered, her voice full of love. Their wedding, held just a few months later, was a small, intimate celebration in the very gallery where their love had been rekindled. Every detail was personal, reflecting their shared journey. Surrounded by Emma's artwork and the people who had supported their journey, Liam announced a significant donation to the gallery's outreach program. The funds would ensure that aspiring artists had a space to grow, create, and thrive for years to come. The gallery was no longer just Emma's dream. It was their shared legacy, a testament to love, trust, and second chances. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting warm golden light through the gallery's tall windows, Emma and Liam swayed together for their first dance as husband and wife. The moment felt surreal, yet perfect. Emma leaned closer, her voice a soft whisper filled with affection. "I'm glad I sat at the wrong table," she said, her lips curving into a smile. Liam tightened his hold on her, his smile soft and full of love. "It was the best mistake either of us could have made," he replied, his voice just for her. As the soft melody carried on, and their friends and family watched with beaming smiles and glistening eyes, Emma and Liam began a new chapter in their lives. Their love, tested and strengthened by every obstacle, felt unshakable. As the scene gently fades, Emma and Liam continue their dance, the golden glow of the gallery lights illuminating their faces. Their smiles, their love, and the joy radiating from their connection remind us that life's most beautiful moments often arise from the most unexpected mistakes. Emma's story is a testament to the transformative power of trust, forgiveness, and love. It shows us that even the unlikeliest of beginnings can blossom into something extraordinary if we're willing to open our hearts. It proves that when two people are willing to fight for one another, no obstacle is too great, and no past mistake too heavy to overcome. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration today. Together, we can spread the message of hope and second chances. Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories about love, resilience, and the incredible power of second chances. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time with another heartfelt story that will touch your soul and remind us all of the beauty of life's unexpected journeys.